Welcome to Murray Montgomery's Lone Star Diary. Murray is a published author and syndicated newspaper columnist. He writes nonfiction stories about the Old West, most of them about cowboys and pioneers to the Lone Star State. Other true stories with an Old West flavor from all parts of America will also be included from time to time. Murray has been writing for some 20 years for the online magazine, Texas Escapes. So sit back and relax, and enjoy these true stories of old Texas. Now, here's Murray.
Hey everybody, this is Murray back with you on this edition of the Lone Star Diary. And tonight we're going to be talking about a Texas Civil War hero that passed away in the little town of Hallettsville, Texas. That'd be in Lavaca County for those of you who do not know. And we're going to talk about this old boy. His name was William Riley Byas, B-Y-A-S. And I featured him in one of my Lone Star Diary columns. And tonight I want to share that with you a little bit and let you get some idea of this guy and the things that those soldiers went through back in the day. Now, this column is with the rest of my columns. It's on a website called TexasEscapes.com. And it's a real good website. I've been writing for these folks for 20 some odd years. And they have just about every little town in Texas that you would wanna know about. Now this column is titled Rest in Peace, Son of the South, William Riley Byas. And it goes like this. Not long ago, I was out on one of my photo expeditions, which I often do, either for my own enjoyment or doing favors for other folks who are seeking images of this area. On this particular day, I decided to pay a visit to Hallettsville, Texas, and the little Hallettsville Memorial Park Cemetery. I wanted to walk among the grave markers to read the dates and births and deaths of those Texas pioneers who have long passed. Looking about, I come upon a headstone that read William Riley Byas, Company A, 34th Regiment, Texas Cavalry, Confederate States of America, 1825 to 1865. William Byas had served in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. You know, being a curious sort, I decided to do some research and see what I could learn about this man. The first information I found came from a newspaper in Ingram, Texas, called the West Kerr Current. A story had been written by Irene Van Winkle about Byas's wife, who had moved from Lavaca County to Kerr County after William had passed away. The reason the newspaper found Mary Ann Byas to be newsworthy was because her father, Andrew Kent, was one of the heroes of the Alamo. Yes, Kent was a part of the Mortal 32 from Gonzales and the Lavaca area who went to reinforce the Alamo. These heroes were the only men who tried in vain to help that beleaguered command. But let me get back to telling you about William Byas. After all, this story was meant to be about him. In his book, A History of Lavaca County, author Paul Badel provides more information about Byas and how he met his wife and the many difficulties that they faced in life. Badel writes that William came to Texas about 1837 after he had left his home in Alabama and hired out to drive a freight wagon along with a group headed for Texas. After crossing the Colorado River and the Brazos and the Lavaca Rivers and Navidad River, as well as Peach Creek, Byas and his fellow freight drivers reached their destination in Gonzales. With the wagon driving job completed, Byas was out of work and decided to hire out to build cabins, haul freight, and clear land until he earned enough money to buy his own wagon and a team of mules. And after accumulating enough funds, he eventually did start his own freight hauling business. Byas hauled cargo from Indianola, traveling north along the west bank of the Lavaca River. This trek took him across the Andrew Kent League and near the Kent home, where the freighters often camped. It is likely that this is where Byas and Mary Ann Kent first met. William and Mary Ann tied the knot in 1845 with the Justice of the Peace J.H. Livergood officiating. One can only wonder if it was love at first sight. The couple built their home on 1,107 acres that Mary Ann had inherited in the Andrew Kent League. Their first child, Joseph, was born in 1847. Shortly afterwards, William served with the Texas Rangers. He also served 6 months during the Mexican War. Between 1852 and 1864, Mary Ann gave birth to 7 more children. In 1862, William enlisted in Company A, 34th Texas Cavalry, Confederate States of America. The 34th saw action in Missouri and Louisiana. During his military training in Louisiana, Byas was called home for a family emergency, and his 15-year-old son Joseph replaced him in the Army for a short while. But the training was too harsh for Joseph, and he was sent home. But William returned to serve. However, William suffered terribly from chronic rheumatism, and he was released by the Army. He tried to serve in a reserve unit, but could not because of his poor health. And Byas died before his unit was activated in 1865 at the age of 40, according to his tombstone. However, some of my research shows his birth a year earlier than what is on the stone, so he may have been 41. But now for the rest of the story. Mary Ann Byas fell on hard times after William died, and the family barely survived the years immediately following the Civil War. And Mary Ann had to sell off hundreds of acres of her inheritance. In 1869, malaria plagued the Lavaca River Valley region, and Mary Ann was encouraged to move out of the area to a drier climate. She took her children to Kerr County to live near her sister's family at Mountain Home. But sadly, it seems the sickness followed the group, and 4 of Mary Ann's children, ranging in age from 18 to 9 years, died on the same day. Mary Ann married twice more and outlived all her husbands. She died at the age of 92 and is buried in Kerr County. And that's the end of the story about William Byas and his wife and his family. And it's a sad story, the loss of those children and William dying at a young age. However, back in those days, 40, it wasn't exactly young, and people lived maybe 50, possibly 60. And the real old Confederate veterans that you see lived on up into their 80s and 90s, and I think there's even some that lived to be over 100. But that was very, very rare that happened. But this gives you some idea of what these folks went through back in those days. You know, I get intrigued by walking through these cemeteries and coming up on these old headstones. You know, it's history that a lot of people don't talk about. And in this day and time, with the things that are going on, people like to tear down statues and any signs of our history. But you know, history is something that needs to live forever. We need to honor these men on both sides of this war. We need to honor our ancestors and all these folks that went through these trying times to develop this great state we know as Texas. So if you get a chance and you want to read this in print, well, go to TexasEscapes.com, look up my column, Lone Star Diary, and look for this story, Rest in Peace, Son of the South, William Riley Byas. And folks, I hope you enjoyed this rendition in this latest edition of Lone Star Diary. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, and I hope that you enjoy these stories, and I hope that our listeners now, we have quite a few from over in India, of all places, that like to hear about Texas history and the old cowboys and the men that fought in the Civil War. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to leave you now, and we'll be working on another edition real soon. But for now, take care of your family, and God bless Texas. Good night, everybody.